Welcome, disciples, scions, and voyeurs of the strange. Today is our Saturday Strange News here on YouTube, and we're simul streaming on Twitter.
We are not live.
I'm not live. I can see it's live.
I know, but it's not showing. It says waiting for Wismar. Hi.
Refresh.
I'm refreshing.
What?
It says waiting for Wismar.
Okay, we're live on Twitter. Let me
Oh,
see.
now it's okay. It's good.
Alright. A little hiccup.
Hello. I'm sorry I ruined your introduction.
This is Wisteria, our skeptical fox witch, and I am Wistmore, the archdruid of this grove within the wild dream. And boy, do we have some wild stuff for you today. UFOs, and the happenings. Yeah. So, what's would normally be some like really dry stuff, sitting in a conference room, listening to people talk about UFOs. We're gonna spice it up. We're gonna break it down. We're gonna make it interesting because it is in general pretty interesting stuff. And let's start with what we have. What do we have here?
You think aliens are dry?
I think conferences are dry, and we have a lot of content from a conference that we're just pulling snippets out of. And then we've also got news articles. And
I would rather say any conference that has aliens is rather juicy.
all right, well, good. Then this will be extra juicy because we're going to be adding some juice into it. And
You
hello.
wanna use a cringe word?
What? Cringe word. Juicy?
No, moist.
Moist. Oh, yeah. Hello out there, Noon. Good to see you.
Hi.
Glad you could join us. I lost my chat. Oh, my chat isn't working.
It's okay.
So if I could let you control chat today?
Yeah, it's nothing in it so far.
Yeah. Just Noon from the before.
Yeah, I saw the noon from the before.
Okay.
He said what and a double what, and I
Wah!
didn't want to. I didn't want to say it 3 times because apparently whenever I repeat stuff, YouTube says banned.
Yeah, gotta be careful of that.
Yeah, I'm the only one that's getting banned for spam.
That was fun times.
This is not fun. This is discrimination. Am I the only one spamming the chat? Am I the only one talking with an echo? Echo.
All right, so what we have here is this conference from Dr. Greer. And there's more to it than just this conference. It's what we have listed here is Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive, and it's a collection of data and witness testimonies and diagrams and all kinds of documents. This presentation was made to see if we could get more people to come forward and give their testimonies and stories. So this is kind of like, hey, here's some people that are coming forward. We've got a bunch of other stuff in documents that support everything that the people today here are talking about. So that's the behind this conference.
Back in.
Where was this conference broadcasted, or was this on the news?
This was just broadcast live on YouTube Monday, June 12th.
Who did it? Like, is it a reputable news source? Are there some just like a witch and a druid doing strange news? What is this?
So Dr. Greer has been in like the UFO scene for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And he has his own biases. Like, he can only see it through one rose-colored kind of perspective. But the interesting thing is that he's collected all these people, and that's what I want to focus on today, is what the people coming forward and saying are. It's not so much about this guy and who's holding it. It's about the stories we're going to hear today and the stuff that was organized around their stories to help make it more understandable. We've got diagrams. We got UFO drawings, like the insides diagrams of UFOs, different types of UFOs.
Architectural plan of a UFO.
Exactly, yeah.
So if you and I put our architecture knowledge together, do you think we can build such a thing?
Well, we'll have to see. We'll have to see.
Will you screen share for me, please?
Oh, yeah, that's very important.
I don't want to miss on the construction details.
There you go.
I have a question. So if a UFO would crash on Earth, and it would be kind of spacious, and it would not be damaged, do you think people would make like a hotel out of it?
Well, I doubt they would be allowed to.
If they were allowed, do you think it would become a tourist attraction? You can stay in the UFO hotel.
Yeah, I don't think so. Because, there are, in some of these instances, there's bad side effects for being in the vicinity of
Oh,
these
like
UFOs.
radiation.
Yeah.
I see. So no UFO honeymoon.
Not unless it was a replica,
I see.
which you can study these diagrams and make a replica. So there you go.
Ability to then pursue it in
All
the
right,
interest
so
of national security.
he's talking a little bit about what's going on here. Let's get past these military
Before we get
sites.
into it, I see that this is 3 hours long.
Yeah.
Did you sit and watch the entire thing?
Yeah, more than once.
Let's give a round of applause for Wizard for providing us with the content, 'cause this is insane.
Yeah, and that's why it's kind of late coming out. I wanted to address it way back in June, but I also wanted to really sit through it and make notes.
I don't think no one beat you to it because it's 3 hours. I don't think anyone sits through it all.
Yeah, very few have, and that's kind of the service we're providing to everybody that showed up today. We're draining the juice out of this conference and serving it up to you like UFO orange juice.
I'm saying illegal because we can
Yeah,
prove
so you
that
had a
this
question
information,
earlier,
as Senator Inouye,
is
I did.
why is this illegal? Why is this
Yeah.
illegal? So, and this will be a nice intro into saying what has changed. What has changed this year in the last month to make all of this, what's with UFOs all of a sudden? And there is something that happened, and we'll address that.
ability to then pursue it in the interest of national security. That has been provided to these key offices. So I just wanted to give you that as sort of an overview of how the list was constructed. It is by no means complete. We have a new whistleblower coming forward every week or two now.
Yeah, so, and this is, like I was saying before, this is developing. They want more people to come up and do the whistleblower function and tell their stories. Whistleblowers would be like government people that have had their own experiences and have been sort of like suppressed in various ways.
Like those news with, I know a reputable source that says this, and then you never find out the source.
Yeah, so they can actually come forward with real proof too.
Like, why do you think they can't come forward? Like, they weren't able to until now. What
Well,
has changed, or who is holding them back?
we're about to cover that.
Oh,
So buckle in, we're gonna get there.
at this point. And Michael Schratzer nodding his head. Yeah, this has become a torrent. And so we want to set up a mechanism. We're recommending that you'll hear what our recommendations are for the President and Congress to resolve this crisis. Next. So I wanted to mention that these bases, if you look at them,
And when we get to the crisis at the end, that'll be interesting too. So keep that little phrase in mind.
so when he
Let's
says
go.
crisis, does he mean that this is a really, really bad thing that's happening?
Yes, he talks about if something isn't done within 6 months, there's really bad effects that could happen.
To this is where all these illegal operations have happened. I'm saying illegal because we can prove that this information, as Senator Inouye said, you'll hear his statement in a moment, has been run by a very shadowy, deep black operation. And we're not talking the legal black budget of the United States. We're talking about projects that presidents and CI directors and secretaries of defense and members of the Congress who have a need to know and are cleared TSSCI in SCIFs, secure compartmented information facilities, have been blatantly either gaslit, denied access.
So there you go. That's one half of the illegality, where there are military projects happening within the U.S., at least within the U.S. You saw a map of global sites there on the screen across the world, and here in the U.S., our budget is controlled by Congress. They are the only ones that have like the legal means to they're the only ones that have the country's purse. Like they're the only ones that can open up the country's purse with taxes, the tax money, and they have been kept out of the loop. And the other half, I have an article here. I'll bring it up so you can kind of see. Oh, hey, look, I was looking at Cyberpunk. All right, good, that's muted. So there was a bill that came through, it was like 2017, where the Congress wanted people to be able to come forward because they knew that these sort of black operations were happening, and they wanted to make a legal protections for these whistleblowers to come forward and not suffer the consequences of doing so. So there was actually a law written recently that says, hey, if you have any information about UFOs or these strange events, we will give you protections to come forward. And that's what has really changed. Because before, there was no protections for anybody coming forward as a whistleblower. These black operations have done many things to dissuade whistleblowers from stepping forward. Anything from threatening violence to them, their family, to threatening careers, all different kinds of threats. And there's a little bit of that will get covered as we get people's testimonies from today. And we won't belabor any of them because these aren't like public speakers that we're going to be listening to. These are people that are in the military and others, positions. They're not politicians. They're not people that do speaking for a living. So there's a lot of rambling around, and we're just gonna slice through it and squeeze the juice. All right, so does that cover decently why these things are illegal?
Yes.
Okay. And also, this is the big change that happened. What's with UFOs all of a sudden comes back to this bill allowing people to come forward uh, with protections. All right, let me check my notes so we can jump ahead.
Can you guys imagine Wismar has this huge book where he has all these notes about cryptids and aliens and everything, and it's like a treasure
Well,
that later generations will find and they'll be like, this is bizarre.
if you hang out and listen today, we're gonna tie in cryptids to all of this too.
I count on you to do that.
All right. Here he is. So what this is a military guy. I think this is from 2004. His story that he's gonna tell, and this was around when the tsunami hit Indonesia. So
Hmm.
he and his team are sent to Indonesia to extract some U.S. VIPs, relatives of President Obama. And this is his story. Oh, let me get to the UFO. Here we go. Here's our first UFO diagram.
And we decided to investigate. The further thing I want to say is that I actually took pictures and video of this before we actually trucked down. We had a dump pouch where we basically, if we expend ammunition, we want to retain our magazines, so we put those there.
Yeah, so one thing that's nice about this presentation is they collected all of this data beforehand and they were able to make these visuals based off of the testimonies of these people. And this is also something new. You'll have people that write books and kind of take these testimonies, but this is like a real organized effort at disclosure to the public. Let me see if I can change the. Yeah, we're on 360p. We gotta change that to make this legible.
I thought you wanted to keep it to 360 to keep the cryptid vibe, or I thought you were just doing a throwback to squinting.
Yeah. And this kind of harkens back to the illegalities of these programs because
Hmm.
they get their funding from illegal drugs and weapons trade. There's even human trafficking involved. And that really makes you question if aliens are involved, if extraterrestrials are involved, do they have uh, a good purpose? Are they actually here to help? Dr. Greer says, yeah, aliens are wanting to help. They want to bring peace and uh, sort of get civilization to the next level. But it's the military operatives, the splinter agencies of governments that are the evil ones. That's certainly apparent, but it does make you also question if there is extraterrestrial involvement. How could
But
they be involved with
uh,
something so nefarious?
what gives us the impression that aliens are actually wanting to do good? Like, what signs did we get other than, hey, it would be nice if they were nice, because otherwise it would be really bad. But we don't really have any signs or evidence to see that they are okay.
The only evidence is particular encounters where they say that they are here to bring peace. There's lots of those. Um, but nothing that we've been presented with today, which is kind of the disconnect between the presenters here and Dr. Greer's own perspective.
Not to rain on anyone's parade, but even if the alien said we are here to bring war, maybe the person who heard it would say, no, I misheard that. I don't know what it means. Just, denying.
Yeah. And there is, just like with fairy stories, there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of deception involved with these encounters too. All right, so what we've got here is he's come across this giant 300-foot UFO in the Indonesian jungle. And he's got his video camera, he's taking footage of this, and then these operatives come out of nowhere, dressed all in black. They've got better gear than he has, and they're obviously unloading like drugs and weapons. There's this whole landing strip right here underneath it that he says is 300 feet. You could set several helicopters underneath it, but they've got all these trucks they're loading up with drugs and weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got containers, and then we've got like a breakdown of the kinds of gear that these operatives had. And they aren't nice to this presenter here, and they make him give up all of his IDs, all of his weapons, and also his camera.
So I dropped my camera in there, and we decided to go down. We didn't have any communications, which was weird, and that was a very odd thing, and it's something that either could have been good that we didn't, or it could have been something that could have been very bad. And it just however you want to look at that. Once we got down this slope, we were approximately 150 meters away from this craft. When we all got to the point where we could
see, we've even got more art.
Wow, this is pretty.
Yeah, and it gets better.
See it just like behind here again, Mr. Shred.
Oh, August 2009.
You can see that the craft here actually had was roughly about 300 feet. And the reason why I know this is because you could fit 3 of the helicopters that we flew in on underneath this craft. It was rotating a clockwise motion. The panels here that you see.
Yeah, so this is still hovering up there. It's rotating. He talks about how it's like Vanta black, where it just like absorbs all light, and it also kind of shimmers. Let me see if I can jump forward a little bit. There we go. So it's definitely awe-inspiring.
Screaming at us, telling us what we were doing. We were not allowed to be there. Who were we with? What were we doing there? Threatened that they could kill us right then and there. We could get lost in the jungle. They could throw us out of a helicopter if they needed to.
Yeah, so that's definitely not nice treatment. That's not hospitality.
Yeah.
It was very nerve-wracking at that point, especially looking to my fellow Marines and seeing the reactions on their faces too. We were all freaking scared, to say none the less. So with that being said, each Marine was then patted down along with myself. We had our weapons taken from us. They were basically cleared in condition 4, which means they had no round chamber, no magazine in. They dumped our magazines out of our mag pouches as well onto the deck. And then again, because of Marine Corps order, how things are with that, we were told to keep our military ID in our left breast pocket. So they knew that. They asked for our military identification. We gave it to them, obviously, because they have guns in our face. So provided that to them. They had something that looked like modern-day smartphones, but this is 2000.
Yeah, and then they also give them threats that, if you talk about this, we're going to come after your family. All right, so yeah, that's at least the cool art and diagram from this particular one. We're going to jump to our next UFO, which is...
When we are done looking at all the UFOs, can we do a ranking of them from best to worst?
Sure. If people want to keep in mind and rank them, that'd be great.
Red lights throughout the bunker due to the current live fire exercise. The range was hot. That means rounds are being fired and lives.
So this is takes place in Fort Irwin, California. There was a okay.
Oh, I want to give one of my hot takes. So, hear me out. You know how they are like round and plate shaped and they have lights all around, and sometimes when it's super dark outside you only see this circle of lights
Mm-hmm.
flying through the sky, and I've seen pictures of them like glowing red or green or stuff like that. Doesn't it look like glowing mushrooms all in a circle and then it just absorbs a person? Doesn't that connect aliens with fairies?
A fairy ring in the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe some encounters line up with that. It does also match up to a lot of aerial phenomenon that's natural that we have explored, like the red lights around earthquakes, and I forget what causes the green lights, but we looked into that a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
Red
I
lights
forgot to.
What?
I forgot to.
Oh,
throughout the bunker due to the current live fire exercise. The range was hot. That means rounds are being fired and lives are at risk at all times.
so this is a V block craft. I'm imagining it looks a little bit like the stealth bomber, if you call it a V block.
Was interrupted by
Noon asks, is this live? Live? We are live? Is this alien live? Are you dreaming? What do you mean?
We're live. What we're studying here is from June 12th, so it's a few weeks back. So yeah, we're not live streaming a live stream.
a very, very ominous call, a net call, said ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire. Came from one of our observer controllers on the ground. There was about 27 teams
Yeah,
out
so
there.
this is taking place on a military base, this particular one. And doesn't that look a little bit like a stealth bomber? We got another one up here.
Yeah. Look, we have another reputable source saying they were stuck in a fairy ring.
Oh yeah.
He was on another going live screen.
Oh. Okay.
They kept soldiers alive and trained them. Sorry, thank you, Doctor.
I wonder why did that happen.
Once my eyes adjusted, I could make out the general shape of the
sorry.
craft. There were two men from Raytheon present. I pulled out my night vision goggles to get a better look at the craft. It appeared to be generating 7 lights along its wings and underbelly. I noticed another smaller craft oriented on the right side and at the same height as the first craft, approximately 75 feet to 100 yards to its right. The second craft was jet black, V-shaped, pointed towards the first craft. This craft had equally joined, spaced, rectangular sections forming the hull. The craft had a gimbal rack that deployed from the bottom of the craft, approximately.
More diagrams. All right, so this is the overall shape.
It has legs.
Yeah.
Like a centipede.
A section with a prong detail. The prongs, protrusions, and spheres. Similar to the Tic Tac UFOs. Okay.
What if we gather all of these diagrams, put them together in a PDF, and market them as, there you go, DIY UFO?
Well, I think that's a lot what this I forget what it was at the beginning, where they had a bunch of this information all documented. You could go to that and just try to figure things out.
Yeah.
Though it mostly just be cosmetic, because there is definitely technology here beyond our current understandings. And the date we're looking at this encounter is around 2000.
Only 5 to 6 holographic lights.
Holographic lights, okay.
Holographic emitting lights were pointed directly at the first craft. That was my assumption. due to the fact that they were displaying a strange color within my MVG goggles. Anyone that knows the old school, circa 2000 MVGs, they don't emit color. They give you green, grays, and blacks.
That is interesting. So what he's saying is he's got on his night vision goggles, and these little circles at the ends of prongs were actually showing within those night vision goggles colors, which are normally just green and black, monochrome. Wild.
But where do you get such goggles?
Military issue.
Can't you buy them?
Yeah, you can. They're fairly pricey though.
Oh. But they actually let you see in the dark.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
it is pretty cool.
I feel like I need them in your room sometimes. It's so dark.
You just need owl eyes.
Yeah, you do have the owl eyes.
Was seeing colors within my night vision goggles. This was not normal. And
So actually, in a lot of these encounters, there is or are strange mind-altering effects, and this is just one example of them. Anywhere from seeing things to eliciting specific emotions. Sometimes it's just awe, sometimes it's uncontrollable fear, but people will just get hit with it and they have no control over it. And it kind of does sound similar to the idea of fairy glamour.
Isn't it anxiety?
Sure. I mean, these situations could be scary in and of themselves, but oftentimes in the recountings, they talk about how it's just on the next level. It's not normal fear. It's just amplified. Like,
yeah, I did.
where they're paralyzed.
Oh, I did see encounters when, as you said, they're paralyzed, but they feel this sense of peace and, calm for some reason.
Yeah. There's a wide spectrum of actual emotions that they decide to elicit.
it was my assumption that perhaps this was a hologram being projected from the other craft. I can't confirm that. However, that was my assessment at the time and my suspicion at the time. I wanted to throw a baseball at it, but I didn't have one, just to see if it was tangible and solid. The second.
And that's like what he was looking at. Yeah, he wanted to throw a baseball through. Because it's something being emitted by the spaceship that he wanted to throw it through, not throw a baseball at the ship itself.
Mm-hmm.
The second craft was jet black, V-shaped. Oh, I'm sorry, jumped a little space here. Thank you for the bullets, Raven. The craft and the gimbal rack were deployed from the bottom of the craft and approximately 5 or 6 lights. Sorry, Dr. Greer. Guys,
let's go forward a bit. We got some other crafts. There we go. Black Diamond Encounter.
Old friend of mine, well, new friend, but he reminded me of an old sighting.
And we've got the same time frame. This is Barstow, California, 2000.
They have at Fort Benning, Georgia. It says, "Follow me." There's another saying we have at the...
And this guy's in the military. He's had a number of encounters that he's sharing with us.
I remember all the little sightings that I saw of UFOs and how their shape changes from one to the other. So we have this pyramid shape, then we have the V, and then we have the circular one. And you tend to find the pyramid shape in sightings that are over deserts or stuff like that. You tend to find the V-shaped ones over crowded cities, and then you tend to find the round ones over fields, with like cattle and farms and forests.
That's some interesting analysis.
Yeah.
To me, it's on the badge. It says Pro Patria Vigilantes, or Vigilis. That means watchful of the nation. And then there's another group of men that I served with, and I tried to keep them alive every day to the best of my ability. Same guys that blew me up. And I still love them today, and I asked for amnesty for all of the information I'm going to say from here on in. These boys are on the ground, on the hottest spots in the planet, along with these other soldiers, and they're dying out there. They're out there killing people under false pretenses.
Cube craft in here somewhere. Is this? No, this is more of the black diamond.
Pointing a floodlight at us. I had some words to say to that man. I stepped through a thick field of white plasma that encompassed a spheroid craft.
That's another theory, is that the shape-shifting aliens, creatures, any kinds of sightings, is that these are beings of plasma, and that's why they're able to shapeshift. Just a theory, but nothing with tangible evidence.
But that would be the creatures themselves or the spaceship?
Both. It could be either.
I see.
As I turned to go inspect the craft, my wife opened the door, and she ran out towards the front of the car, and she was yelling, "Steve, no." She was instantaneously locked in place in a bright white field of plasma. As I looked at her,
So you can see again that she's been somehow mind controlled. So she's locked in place.
I thought to myself, it's okay, she's in stasis lock. That plasma enveloped her body with about 6 inches. I heard a female voice calmly state, felt like it was in my head. It said,
Yeah, and there's lots of incidences of telepathy where they speak directly into your mind.
is in stasis lock. It was a confirmation. Thank you, Dr. Greer. Relieved that she was safe, I started approaching the craft for further inspection. The craft and the car were nose to nose at a 90-degree formation. If you looked at it from a bird's eye view, it would be in an L shape, nose to nose. The craft was, there was a plasma field emitting approximately 12 inches off of the craft inside this white plasma field. The craft seemed about approximately 23 feet long.
Right. Oh, more black diamond information.
Do you believe in the concept of telepathy in general, not as just alien thing?
I have actually experienced it.
And was it scary? Did it feel, like how people say, like, am I going insane or not? Or did it make sense?
At the time, I actually thought it was somebody speaking to me. And it's actually been a number of occasions. And it wasn't until later that I was speaking to this person and they're saying, I didn't say any of that, but I was actually thinking it. So yeah, just strange stuff like that. But, after a few occurrences, I was able to differentiate how it sounds in your head, because it doesn't actually have the same, like it's a voice without an accent. It's a voice that is completely like neutral.
Yeah, it's not like you imagine that person saying something.
Yeah, it's not your voice either.
So it's not scary?
It can be, depending on the situation, but not every time. All right, so we've got another diagram of this black diamond craft. We got some heat sink alloy, plasma emitting lights. So the lights actually emit the plasma. They got inputs. That's black, okay. Here we go. Hovering granite slab. Ever heard of these?
No. So this is straight up just a block.
Yep.
Directly in front of me, that was being held up by nothing. The closer that I got to this slab, I felt an intense vibration inside of my body. I never felt anything like that before in my life. Never anything since, but it left no sound. The loudest thing in that room was the silence and the footfalls of the people in front of and behind me. As I got closer, my natural southern curiosity took over. Oh, my shoes are untied. So I go down just to take a peek.
Okay, so this is from 2010 on Fort Bragg.
And there's absolutely nothing up underneath this monolithic slab that, if I had to estimate, would be well over 100 tons. Absolutely nothing holding it up. You can see by the picture, there's another boulder directly behind it.
It's very 2001 Space Odyssey, you know, where that
Yeah.
Neanderthal touches the slab and then it gives him intelligence, knowledge.
Yeah.
It was flat on the ground. There were two other people beside it. I could only see heels and feet. To the right, you could see what looked like a boulder. And all three of these that I could tell had this box on top that was black with spires that came off, and I couldn't tell where it was connected, but it obviously had something to do with the levitation. The one to the right was being spun by the personnel that you could see in the picture. At this point, from my knees, the escort needed me in the back, said, "Let's go." We follow on, go downstairs to our appointed place to take measurements for an underground firing facility for a live fire range. Excuse me. When it was all said and done, less than 15, 20 minutes later, we make our way back to the surface through the same hangar that we had noticed the monolithic slabs and the boulders.
This
And
is
there was
actually
absolutely
indoors.
nothing there.
So it's a craft that the government or this particular organization has actually acquired.
There was no noise for anyone taking anything out. It was one flight down to our appointed place, but you could still hear that there was nothing going on in the facility that we were in. We make our way out. We get back in the van, and they take us back to 18th Airborne Headquarters so we can retrieve our telephones, our IDs. Something was said to my father, and they retrieved all of the notes that were taken. Everything that he had that he recorded from whenever we were downstairs, they took it from him. I didn't think much of it. I go back upstairs, help him wrap up in the G5 war room. And it was at that time there was a gentleman sitting at the desk. Everyone was cleared out. And he had two pieces of paper. Said, I need you to sign this NDA. Absolutely not. You know, we didn't so much take it as a joke, but we just didn't feel like the things that we had witnessed, although I did realize it was something that I never should have seen in my life.
We're getting an idea of what kinds of stories these people are coming forward with. This is actually about a neutrino base in Antarctica. It's not really UFO related. And there have been a number of official government inquiries.
Here,
See if we can get that
but there's
slide.
a history.
There we go. These are the official government inquiries into UFOs. Started in 1952, Project Blue Book. Not to be confused with Project Bluebeam. But
Why are all these projects blue?
I don't know. So essentially what Project Blue Book is, it was the government inquiring to see if we were actually being visited by extraterrestrials. This is from the National Archives. So this is real legit stuff. This is a government website talking about Project Blue Book.
Mm-hmm.
One interesting thing that comes up in here is the Majestic 12. This is like a secret society that I've heard a lot about, and I was quite surprised to actually see it in official record.
What is it about?
It's about like scientists and geniuses studying alien crafts and phenomena to develop the technology from.
Mm-hmm.
and it's not a national organization. It's a world organization, not controlled by any country. Yeah, so they did a lot of studying of the evidence at the time, and in 1969, Project Blue Book was shut down. I got a little article excerpt about this Condon report. Condon Group finds no evidence of visits from outer space. So that's not saying that these things aren't happening. It's just saying we have no evidence that this is actually coming from off-world. That was the government's finding.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't looked into these NASA 2020 and the AARO 2022 yet. And I know that they are kicking up a new congressional hearing about all of these things coming forward, all of these stories and whistleblowers coming forward. And I even have a recent news clip. Let me see if I can grab it. There it is. So we'll come back to Dr. Greer in a minute. Here is
investigative journalist Ross Coulthart.
News from just 2 days ago.
That's fresh.
Yeah, we got the fresh orange juice here.
Was the first to interview David Grush. He joins us.
And David Grush is the one that kind of kicked off this whole UFO whistleblower event.
Man says, I'm gonna go to bed for the bed wish. Good night later in an amazing stream. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Noon. Thanks for joining us. Hope you sleep well.
I'm reading your messages like I'm an alien. I'm sorry.
Baka badaka badapada.
Like that dog.
Now, Ross, a lot's happened since then. Your interview for News Nation started the cascade of events that's brought the UFO conversation mainstream. Even Senator Marco Rubio is saying we should listen to what they have to say. When you heard the senator talk about this,
Can we actually get to where the government officials talking?
Mike Gallagher. So we're looking at a bypass
Oh, it got too far.
from the public and the Congress. And it's quite extraordinary, I think, to hear this admission by the senator, because he's now bipartisan. We now know that Senator Gillibrand as well is saying that she wants hearings. And also in the Congress and the House, there's push from both Representative Burchett and also Representative Mike Gallagher. So we're looking at a bipartisan push here, Blake.
Yep.
It's a very significant moment. This is really getting momentum.
Oh, there also is another recent development of the 6 month timeline. One half of that is the government has said, come forward with all of your information within 6 months. And otherwise, if you don't come forward with this information, we're going to not provide any more funding for you. So these different companies that receive government funding for these kinds of projects will lose their funding if they don't come forward and do their disclosure about what's actually happening. So that's one half of it, and we'll get to the other half when we get back to Mr. Greer, Dr. Greer.
so you mentioned Senator Rubio and the secret hearings that you talked about, or at least information that he has heard from, or people that he has heard from. He talks about, quote unquote, firsthand claims of certain things. What do you think the quote certain things might be? Because he didn't get specific, but I'm curious as to what you think that might be.
Well, I know what they are. What they are people who are from within the legacy program, people who say they are working on retrieved non-human intelligence, alien, if you like, technology. I know this is mind-blowing, and I know a lot of your audience are still shaking their heads going, my goodness, how can this possibly be true? But I am told, because I'm speaking to people who have come forward to give evidence and who
Have
are
they come
about to
forward
come
since the
forward to
special,
give
Ross?
evidence.
Like when they saw David Grush come out and David Grush said, look, I'm putting myself on the line here. Did that sort of open the door? Did that open the floodgates? And have you heard from multiple people since then?
Yes, I have. And more importantly, a lot of those.
Yeah, so it's not just Dr. Greer that's getting all of these whistleblower information. It's a number of different organizations that are trying to get the information out there, and this guy's another one of them.
Those people,
Yeah,
whilst
but
they
my God, have you heard him? He has this unsettling AI voice. Is it just me?
I thought he sounded kind of cool. But
He sounds cool, but he sounds cool because you don't expect it. And I was just like, wow, this is how telepathy would sound like.
yeah,
deeply admire David Grush for his courage in going public. What they're hoping is that as well as public hearings, they will be able, within a private hearing of the Congress, to give their evidence in camera, in a secure skiff. Because a lot of the evidence that they have to reveal is highly confidential.
And you say that they're making, since David Grush came forward, the people that have since come forward to you, you're saying are making basically the exact same claims that Grush made. Absolutely.
So essentially what these claims are is that the government has non-human technology, and anybody that has come or threatened to come forward or even thought about coming forward has been threatened. So that's the same thing. That's what stays the same through all these different stories.
And more importantly, just to emphasize this, the Inspector General of the intelligence community has already deposed. He's taken evidence from some of these people, which is why he found Mr. Grush's allegations to be credible and urgent and referred them to the Congress.
A public hearing with Grush, you think that's inevitable at this point? And if so, when?
Yes, there's a strong intention from both Senator Gillibrand, Senator Marco Rubio, and also in the House from Congressman Burchett and Gallagher. I suspect that there will be multiple hearings. The Congress has now got its teeth into this issue, and I guess you just have to wonder at what stage, Blake, does the president intervene? I think it's catastrophic if there's a forced disclosure here. I think the government needs to actually consider now some kind of admission, because the evidence is overwhelming. The weight of witnesses is becoming extremely strong. Does the government want this to come out in a spill inside the Congress, or does it want to present as a government that's in charge, that's able to tell the public the truth?
Well, it's obvious the government isn't in charge. Okay, and let's hop back to Dr. Greer. Still with me?
Yeah. Hype.
So we'll hit on that 6-month clock now.
Can I just say that whenever something bad is about to happen, people always say 6 months. This is the same with the climate crisis, the any sort of war or something like that.
2012 apocalypse.
Exactly. The 2009 apocalypse. Some sort of earthquake after the Turkey earthquake. Here in Romania, there were rumors that we need to prepare because in 6 months there's gonna be massive earthquake.
Yeah,
And it's always like 6 months, and I don't know why.
I think it's just long enough for people to forget about it.
Okay.
So they can come up with a new one. But we do actually have a hard timeline. Why 6 months is because Congress has said 6 months or else you lose your funding. So places like Raytheon, Boeing, these facilities, corporations that get government funding have to come forward with this information or lose their funding.
Some of these few that are very much at the top were just obeying orders. They were at a site, they were Delta Force or a Navy SEAL or what have you. They didn't know that the management of it had escaped constitutional control. And I didn't know that until 1993. And that was, of course, my coming of age when I realized, my God, the president and the director of the CIA are being denied access, and then multiple senators.
Yeah, so that gets back to why this is illegal.
And congressmen that I met with privately. So I think that what we want to do is resolve this in a peaceful, legal fashion, and we do not want to just go straight to, DEFCON 1, right? We don't want to go to that. So I think we need to do that in the next 6 months, however. The information I have, I don't want to go further than that, is that a clock has been placed on this. It must be resolved within this year, early next year, and then things are going to deteriorate significantly.
So really that's all he's got for us, is things are going to deteriorate significantly. The best we can do is surmise what that means. With a defunding of these groups, that, or with this clock, an ultimatum has been set. These are powerful groups, and who knows how they will react. So that's the kind of deterioration I think he's alluding to, is once this ultimatum, the time runs out, what are the reactions going to be? So yeah, it's not nothing concrete to go off of, but it's just a natural, okay, things have been brought to a climax and we got to see how they resolve.
So those 6 months are counting from June 12th?
Well, he's saying by the end of the year.
Oh.
So roughly 6 months.
So we are gonna have an alien Happy New Year?
Maybe it'll be an interesting new year.
Tune in the New Year stream.
All right, now we're going to switch it up a little bit.
A little bit.
And wait. Let's try this again.
From all the alien, have you seen alien movies, by the way, like any kind?
Yeah, it's been a while, but I have.
Which one do you think is most, not realistic, but compelling? Like it's actually good and doesn't make a joke or stereotype out of it.
The first one was really good, and
The first alien movie.
yeah, I think that's why it got so many sequels. Is it was such a good movie.
Were the sequels any better?
With a lot of sequels, it doesn't have quite the same feel. It kind of turns more into special effects and eye candy. They're still fun movies, but the first one is like really a thriller, horror kind. And the special effects are amazing, and that's why with the sequels they're like, okay, we got to keep things just as amazing to stay on brand. And so even after all of these decades, since they use practical special effects and they got real artists involved, they hold up. There's no disconnect or lack of believability to the special effects.
What do you tend to incline towards the most? The CG in a movie was done really good, or practical effects?
Practical effects. I think what the issue is I need to be signed into Twitter to view this. Let me just see if I can grab the image.
to be honest, I'm just opening my eyes towards practical effects from the Howling series.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can really tell with CG when it's bad and it's really bad, and even when it's super good, you still can tell that something is not there, and it's just you're not excited. But I feel a strange passion towards practical effects because I never knew they could be so satisfying.
Yeah, and I think there has also been a recent shift to offload CGI to freelance companies and to the lowest bidder. So I think CGI is actually getting worse as well.
Do you think it's dying?
I wouldn't say dying, but in Hollywood, it's degrading.
Are there any new movies that use practical effects that are actually good, or people tend to not attempt them?
It's usually the independent films that are.
I wish to watch documentaries on the behind the scenes on practical effects in horror movies.
I think there was kind of a resurgence with the Blair Witch Project because it was so low budget and was such a phenomenal success. People wanted to replicate that success and profit. So there was a
Yeah.
bunch of copycats about Blair Witch, and that was all just not showing anything and just shaky cam. So what we're looking at here is a map of all of the UFO sightings from 1906 to 2014. And what do you notice about these locations?
I can't see anything.
Oh, it's because I'm not screen sharing the image. So I gotta switch that over to you. There you go.
Cool. So these are UFO sightings.
Yep.
Reported to whom? To the authorities, to a UFO society. Like who
It's
could?
it's a collection of like reports. So it may not actually be people reporting it too. It'll be like looking at news and stuff like that. So it is an organization.
I see. The you can see them scattered a bit in Europe. I can see a few in Australia, but not really. And then we have the hotspot that is glowing. Do you think it happens to be the same as if you believe in something that it tends to happen more often? So if you believe in fairies, they exist. Therefore, people in the US truly believe in UFOs, and therefore they come like Santa.
Well, I think the other side of that is that if you're looking for something described in a particular way, you're going to find that particular thing because it's already described in this way. So like if you're asking for UFO sightings, you're going to have people that think of these things as UFOs. And if you also are looking at UFO sightings, that is done in English, UFO sightings. So if you're just looking at English reports, we have hotspots of places where people speak English.
Okay.
So that's my take on it. Is just we have a map of English speakers.
Yeah, because you can see a few of them in Europe.
Yeah, and it looks like
Mhm.
the Netherlands. There's a lot of English speakers.
Um, I couldn't. Can you zoom in?
That's as much as I can get.
Cool. So that would be Great Britain that is like glowing.
What?
That would be Great Britain that it's like
Yeah,
growing.
that's Great Britain there.
Okay. And on the edge there, it could be a bit of Denmark, a bit of Netherlands.
So
That
this
they
is
have like a
Denmark right up here. You can see
yeah,
it
they
coming up.
have a huge English-speaking population because of all their immigrants and whatnot. But yeah, you can really tell that the parts that are glowing are actually people speaking English.
Yeah, and then we also have like a huge overflow into Canada. So it's not just the United States.
Are actually people who speak English the aliens?
I don't know about that. Um, I think with the UFO studies, there is a major blind spot to reports made in other languages. I think South America would be absolutely lit up if anything was studied in Spanish. Because there have been people that have done translations uh, that have some very interesting stories from South America.
Would you like to hear UFO stories from Vaslui?
You have some?
Not right now. I was wondering
Oh,
if you would study the Romanian ones.
yeah.
Let's see.
And you'll have like other cultures that don't see these things as UFOs either. So you have vast dark places because they wouldn't be UFO sightings, they'd be some other experience. Like in Asia as well.
Mm-hmm.
But another point I wanted to make about this map is this is from 1906 to 2014, and the world is pretty lit up. If this was a map of animal sightings, there'd be no question that these animals existed. There'd be no question that animals lived here. So I think this is actually evidence that UFOs aren't visiting, at least. UFOs are here, they've been here. There's an obvious sort of habitation going on. And I think that might go back to the congressional findings that they're not off world. But what they are is still inconclusive.
Yeah. I found a news article from Vaslui
Yeah.
about aliens and how locals started to see these hovering objects around this edge of the forest where they would usually gather like families and whatnot to have a barbecue and relax and be a bit outside the huge city. And one guy that was like kind of pointing it out was someone who just got back from working abroad in Italy, and he thought that uh, the things that were flying above were drones from the police, like meant to supervise people. And locals said, like, yeah, they're kind of here all the time. Don't worry about them. But he was, I don't know, like not okay with them because he said, like, this doesn't even happen in Italy. Then they are more, I would say advanced, but more surveillance inclined. I'm gonna have
Okay.
beef with Italians soon. And they all made this like written notice for the local police to either, if they're drones, to stop them because they are disrupting their night of like singing and barbecuing, or to just do something about them. And the police said, look, these aren't ours, these aren't drones, this is something else. And you're like, oh, so could this be aliens? But they were just a bit disturbed about them because they were just hovering above while they were having their good old sausage and bacon and whatever, the barbecue. So you can see that people from here tend to really enjoy their routines, and they don't want any extraterrestrial being to get in the way of their fun. So they might as well pick up their ship and go.
Yeah, and I do think that also kind of speaks to American culture as well,
Hmm.
where we've got this whole Hollywood machine that put UFOs at the forefront of our consciousness. And so if you see something, regular American see something in the sky, regular Americans gonna go back to their cultural store, which is movies, and say UFO. Like the first time they see a Goodyear blimp flying around with its lights, they're probably going to think UFO, and then maybe see it a bit closer and realize that there's a sports game going on.
Yeah. I also do think that for Americans, where you guys tend to make a story out of anything. Like if something happens and you're like, wow, this is, I'm getting my minutes of fame. It's not like everyone wants to get famous, but everyone is so willing to get on the news to tell some crazy story in their mind, which turns out to be not that crazy when they tell it. And compared to in European parts of the continent, people tend to have a lot of crazy stories and they just casually tell them at a dinner, and foreigners are like, whoa, that's huge, like, do you have to go to news with that? And you're like, yeah, it's just another Saturday.
Yeah, that's true. Um, I think it also kind of goes back to how Americans are so gregarious and outgoing, where
Hmm.
other cultures are the exact opposite.
Yeah, we kind of tend to say that you're not going to exploit my experience and my knowledge just because this is for me to keep into my memory. I'm going to take it to my grave and that's it.
Yeah, it's a story to tell my friends. It's not for strangers.
Yeah, that's why I feel like friend gatherings here tend to be wild because everyone has their own creature stories and haunting stories and UFOs and someone's grandmother got drunk and stuff like that.
Um,
Do you have those kind of stories when people get drunk and they start fighting with a bear?
no, but I'm a city boy, so maybe other people do that aren't city folk.
Hmm.
Um, since we kind of touched on it, I want to address interdimensional UFO hypothesis.
Hmm.
UFO. There we go. And it is very strange that there's so many commonalities between supernatural phenomena and
Hmm.
UFO encounters, and it's always been the case. Um, Even at the beginning of UFOs, and that's where this whole interdimensional UFO hypothesis comes from. Um, but it so it starts with the 19th century and spiritualists, which were people that would hold seances and contact other dimensions, or speak with dead relatives and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so even with the early UFO sightings, they were like sort of described as etheric, and that kind of goes back to the concept of plasma.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's some very interesting connections that make the whole study of UFOs even more interesting and like a deeper rabbit hole. It's unending.
Yeah. You know why you might not be able to find UFO news in, let's say, Romanian or Spanish just by searching the keywords? Because you can search Bigfoot, for example, and if people tend to cite the stories as like, the local version of Bigfoot, also known as Bigfoot, you tend to find those stories as by keywords and then you translate stuff.
Yeah.
So if people like really, really want to try, they can. In English, you have it shortened to UFO. In Romanian, it's OZN.
Okay.
So, like, there are the three different letters that you get it shortened to, and it's different, I think, for every language. Therefore, the research that you can do in multiple languages isn't that streamlined.
Yeah, that's true. Because there'll be sort of different kinds of descriptions that aren't exact translations.
Yeah.
So you have to have somebody that really knows the language that's being studied to be able to pull out the similarities,
Mm-hmm.
which is a rarity.
Yeah.
But one other thing I wanted to address about the interdimensional hypothesis is that the fourth dimension. Do you know what the fourth dimension is?
Yeah.
What is it?
It's, how you have the all the three dimensions that you can access, and the fourth one is like in regards to you can only access stuff with your mind.
Uh, almost. That's actually the
Okay.
fifth dimension.
Oh, okay. I
But
skipped one.
very good. The fourth dimension is actually time. So you have, two-dimensional, which we understand is just like a flat plane, and then three-dimensional sort of brings you above that, and we're mostly three-dimensional beings. Like this is how we understand the world. If you step into
Mm-hmm.
the fourth dimension, then that's sort of crossing into a dimension that is not our own, one that we don't experience, and
Yeah.
that is time. So the whole idea of these sightings being a inhabited or an inhabiting force kind of gets muddled, because if these entities are able to travel without being locked into the flow of time,
Mm-hmm.
then they could appear at any time, any place, and that means they're able to wink in and out of existence because they've jumped possibly to another time, another dimension, another time in um, dimensional time.
Would it be worth it to study some UFO sightings to see if you can spot two similar UFOs, to see if they skipped time and how close they skipped it in regards to the location of it?
Yeah, actually, I think some people have done that, and they've kind of seen similarities through blocks of time
Mm-hmm.
where like we had certain phases of particular crafts, like the whole
Yeah.
bell-shaped phase around World Wars, and then we had like the tic-tac shapes, um, and then triangle shapes came out. So there's different kind of phases of these stories in technology too. But there are some strange standout cases that kind of skip around too through time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it is an interesting subject to study.
So overall, do you think that they are not necessarily coming to us to contact us, but they are more likely just not glitching, but appearing briefly through time, and we sort of see it as a way to contact us? That's why we don't really find them in outer space, but rather we find them here. They're just traveling in the universe, glitching in and out of our time of recording them.
Well, I think it's kind of like you drop your glasses in the middle of the night and you look for your glasses where the street light is, because that's the only place you can see.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you'll necessarily, that's where you're going to find them, but that's where you've got the best opportunity to find them.
I would like to say that that is, if you can see that spot, that is most likely the first place that you're going to notice they're not there.
Yeah. So we look for things where we can see them, and we have our blind spots.
True. But in regards to time travel and the ability to know what is beyond the third dimension, if we were able to start to comprehend that in a way, would you be open to knowing about your future, other people's future, or would you rather stay in the 3D space?
Um, I don't know. Is I I don't really get invested personally with these ideas. It's more just curiosity and trying to figure things out. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like I want to experience a UFO or I want to travel to other dimensions. It's just I want to explore the ideas.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that if you were able to peer into your own future to answer yourself some questions, would you do it?
Um, sure, but I'm not sure that it even works like that, because there's the possibility that there's a number of different timelines,
Mm-hmm.
um, like an infinite number. So seeing one future doesn't mean it's actually the one I'm going to experience.
Yeah.
So,
Sometimes you see that particular future just because you are looking into it right now, so you're changing the course of action.
true. Like it might destroy the connection to that particular timeline.
Yeah, so therefore, just because you peeked into the future, that means that you already chosen another path that will unfold differently to what you saw.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is a burning question for a lot of people. It's like how they are trying to predict the future through all means of meditation and lucid dreaming, tarot, esoteric stuff like that. And I feel like this is a answer that might put their mind at ease for now, because people tend to be rather anxious with their future, if it's going to be all right or not, or stuff like that. But just because you can peek into your own future and see a certain thing, that doesn't mean that your own actions can change it.
I do think that there's probably a locus of probabilities. So you might
Mm-hmm.
have a wide range of possible outcomes, but they all sort of operate within what would be likely to happen. So, like 5 different variations of sort of the same thing, of being
Mm-hmm.
in the same place. And when you sort of do fortune telling, being able to connect with what would be the most probable, or what has like the most pull because of this sort of locus of similar happenings in the future. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's the possibility of sort of a vague um, idea of how things are going to play out, but a defined future um, isn't usually isn't even in these people that have high success rates of prediction.
Do you feel like with this fourth dimension of time, we are trying to like poke through it to get like a sense of um a grasp on it, basically, and we are not using math or physics or anything, and we are using rather these esoterical things
Yeah.
like tarot and stuff like that. uh we are like desperately trying to find a way to pierce that time veil, and I don't know if it's working, but I feel like where everything is figured out in 3D with physics and math and everything, we have a lot of the spirituality that would tap into the fourth dimension, which people harness in different ways, and people understand in different ways. This is how don't get a streamlined process of actually piercing through that veil yet. I don't know.
Yeah, it's been a constant throughout history to
Yeah.
want to be able to foresee the future, to be able to react better to present moments. And even the US government has done real research into transcending space time. And it's using a lot of spiritual language to do so. And it's using the mind. It's not using particle theory or CERN level kinds of technology where you're smashing particles together. This is actually sort of very amongst the realms of pseudoscience and spirituality and consciousness. And there's been a lot of study into it. That's why I have this little article here. It's called the Gateway Process, and or Gateway Experience was the report, and it's been declassified. And people have been kind of studying it to see if there's anything in it that they can use. So it's something that I'm not really going to delve too deep in on here because it's tangentially related to the topic today, but it's worth a deeper look, the gateway process, the gateway experience, if you're so inclined. But yeah,
That was a deep dive.
yeah, and we also were able to boil down, I think, 3 hours into under an hour, and then we had some details and fleshing out we could do with outside sources. So I think today was pretty successful. And I'm still working on my presentation skills, but I think it was a pretty successful stream.
I enjoyed it.
Okay. Any other last thoughts?
That I think we are piercing the veil of time with our portals and our streams.
Okay. Yeah, and the whole series of fairy and folklore deep dives I do on the YouTube short videos really kind of ties into. So we'll have more of those coming out soon, and I think this, if we're doing strange news and ignoring what was happening in current day events that were pretty big in relation to strange news, I think we'd be doing a disservice to our audience. So I wanted to make sure that we got this in.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us, and like, subscribe, because we've got more coming.
Exactly.
All right. Catch you next one.
Bye.